Hi, I'm here with Joseph McWhorter, who is a PhD student at Boston University. Um, Joe, can you tell me a little bit about just kind of what you did as a managerial role? Just, I don't know, kind of the basics, what your team does, what your team consists of. I don't know, like the hierarchy of where you are.
Yeah, definitely. So, like Thomas said, I'm a PhD student at Boston University down on their medical campus. And what that means is I'm involved in research studying the interactions between HIV and TB and the heterologous immunity that TB can influence in HIV and TB co-infection. And as a PhD candidate, that means that I'm on track to earn my degree at the end of this. So its structure is a little bit different than what you would find in business because we're in an academia setting. So the lab is essentially structured so that way there's one professor over everybody who runs the lab, who has the grant funding to pay everybody. And then below them are usually postdocs, which are people who have already gotten their PhD and are there doing extra research to do an extra degree. And then you can also have research scientists who are people who've also graduated and are doing extra research. And then below them, you have graduate students, which is where I sit as a PhD student. So there's a couple other of us in the lab. And then below us, you have master's students and undergrads who are there completing either their undergrad or master's degree. And they're usually there to gain more experience to usually get into a PhD program. And so most of my role when it comes to managerial is mentoring the students below me and teaching them all the ins and outs of science that they need to know so that way they can go on to succeed later in their careers.
Okay, awesome. Um, yeah, that's interesting. So, uh, I guess coming from my perspective, I don't really have much experience in that kind of academia role with like research and everything, since I come from a more business background. So that's something that is interesting to learn about, just because I don't have any previous knowledge of it. So I guess so for your the big project, how do you make sure that your team kind of stays on track with what you need to do? How you, I don't know, just communicate with your employees, or I guess the students below you, that I don't know, just what research they need to do and how you make sure you stay on schedule and all of that.
Yeah, so it can be kind of difficult a lot of times in science to stick to a specific schedule because um, you're experimenting, you're trying new things that haven't really been done before, and you're asking questions that don't have answers yet. So you're kind of foraying on the edge of what is known. And so you run into a lot of unexpected roadblocks a lot of the times. And then to compound that, a lot of the students who are below me don't have the experience yet to be very independent. So a lot of my role is teaching them how to run the different assays that they need to run, how the data that they're generating from those assays incorporates into the project that I'm leading. And then this project that I'm leading will eventually go on to become my dissertation and the foundation for me graduating with my degree. And then over top of all of that, we have the professor for the lab who has several students working on several projects who I report to, and he's the one who makes sure that I can graduate in a reasonable amount of time, hopefully within 4 or so years. And so there's kind of a whole hierarchy that's more or less based on experience. And so when it comes down to timing, you spend a lot of time actually mentoring and teaching more so beyond trying to deliver deliverables, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's cool because in my experience, a lot of what we use at because I work at Paycom and they it's a tech company. So what they do is like really specific sprints. So in 2 weeks, this is what exactly what we need to get done, and like these are the exact things that need to go into that portion of the app. So kind of working on something that's like unknown like that is
Mhm.
definitely foreign to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you do have large overall timelines, usually from the people who give you the grants to do the research. So you can't really not, you can't just, I guess, waste away all the money and then not have it go anywhere. Like you do have people you have to report to, and you want to publish your data in journals, otherwise your PI is going to lose his job. So there are things you have to do, but it's not necessarily as rigorous as, your work at Paycom
Yeah.
time wise.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. Okay, so since most of your team is students, I guess they are mostly master's students, or is there anybody that is getting the undergrad that works under you?
Um, yeah, most of the time I say the people I'm working with are undergraduates actually.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I know since most of them are students, do you have a lot of like just no-shows on the day, or how do you, I guess, how do you deal with that in the moment, and then how do you communicate to that student, just what they could do better and how, I don't know, how that affects your project?
Yeah. So having an undergrad can be complicated in the sense that they have their classes going on and they're in the midst of getting their degree and they have tests that they need to do. And so if they aren't good at communicating about their schedule and their stress, then it can really complicate all the things that I need to do further down the line because I have my own projects that I need to do. And so there are times where, undergrads just don't show up and you just kind of have to pick up the slack where it is and then try to explain to them later how it affected you and how it affected the rest of the team, having to pick up where they left off essentially. And to complicate the problem, where I do my research is on a different campus from where most of the undergrad classes are. And it's about a 30-minute or an hour commute, depending on traffic between the two places. And so sometimes they can just get stuck on the shuttle bus between the two. And then now you're an hour behind schedule, and getting an hour behind schedule, sets off all of the other incubation times further down the day, and you end up staying much later than you want to. So you just have to kind of be flexible and take those things in stride. And part of that understanding comes from when I was an undergrad, I had a mentor who was a PhD student who did the same thing with me. So kind of fostering that kind of community as well among our team and also in the scientific community, paying back what I was given.
Yeah, that's really cool. Um, I guess, yeah, since you were in that position, you have a good understanding of what their they, go through and what their thoughts on whatever research they're doing. Um, I guess since you're only a few years older than a lot of your team, how do you kind of merit yourself? I guess like you were saying in that mentor role, a lot of the time, versus just like a strict boss kind of thing. But I guess, yeah, how do you merit yourself to make sure that they kind of realize that you are, like, what you're talking about in all of these things, and kind of foster that respect almost, I guess, from those people that are below you?
Yeah, definitely. One of the keys is just having confidence in the experience that I've built up over the years doing this kind of science. And then with that, being able to explain effectively to somebody who hasn't done it before, even something that I've done, 100 times seems simple to me, but being able to effectively explain that to somebody who has no idea what is going on. And then also how what I'm teaching them will end up being helpful to what we want to achieve further down the line. So it's those two things together, I think, that kind of help establish my experience and as a mentor like role, because it's not like a typical job where they're being paid to be there. They're there because they're interested and they want experience, and sometimes they'll get course credit, but usually they're there on kind of a voluntary basis. So um, taking that opportunity to get assistance on your project, but also learn how to explain your science and help people who are genuinely interested in what you're doing. So I think that dichotomy of them being in like a voluntary role, coming to our lab because they're interested, and then also me having the confidence to explain my science in a clear way to them, helps establish that mentor-mentee dynamic.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. Um, I guess, so within that, you kind of make sure that they understand all like the aspects of what they're working on and how that contributes to the overall project. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. And
which,
also explain that things aren't going to work out a lot of the times. And so when things don't work out, not to just immediately give up, because that's a very tempting thing to do when some of the simple things don't work out.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, okay. And then I guess within that, you're saying, stuff sometimes doesn't work out. How do you build like a sort of team dynamic and like, I guess almost a camaraderie between you and the students that you're working with?
Yeah, one of the good ways to do this is through different lab events. And so we have like a little bit of funding set aside to go do things as a lab. And for example, one of the things that you should do as a scientist is read academic papers. And those can be kind of dense and hard to get through. So we'll have what we call as literature review, which is where you'll read a couple papers, somebody else will read a couple papers, and you all come together and talk about it. But instead of doing it in, a stuffy boardroom where everybody has presentations, we'll go out to a bar down the street and share some food and some drinks, and all talk about science together in kind of a fun, more relaxed way. And so that's one of the ways we can kind of build a team environment. Another way that we like to do it is to go on outings as a whole department. So our lab is part of a whole academic department with a couple other labs, and there's funding in that department to go do things. So for example, we went to the aquarium one time, or we'll just go do different things around the city and kind of develop a community around that.
Okay, yeah, that's really cool. I know in a corporate environment, they kind of have the same thing with, I mean, teams have the budget to go do lunches or whatever
Mhm.
along those lines. And I guess just lastly, what I guess would you kind of recommend to somebody who's just starting out in a role, maybe not strictly like managerial, but in your kind of specific thing, if somebody is just starting out with having people below them, in any sense of the word, or in any sense of um, having people below them, but I guess in your specific like academia thing, because I know a lot of the people that probably end up watching this aren't as well versed in like the science parts of it as much as the business parts of it.
Yeah, so you're asking like how, like tips for somebody who is a new graduate student who has have people below them.
Yeah, exactly. Just a couple.
Yeah. Um, it's a good question. I'd say probably the first one, well, one tip would be communication and establishing that with the undergrad or master student that you're working with, because that's going to be key to actually being able to finish the projects that way you both end up happy and where you need to be. Another really important part is to establish an environment where it's okay to be wrong, and ask the stupid questions, because asking those stupid questions can sometimes give you completely different perspectives on what you're doing. And so, and also you don't want, one of the worst things to do as a mentor is to have an environment where the people below you hide their mistakes, especially in science, because when these undergrads or whoever joins the lab, they have no idea what's going on, they're going to make a lot of mistakes. And even small details can make large impacts further down the line. So you're saving yourself a lot more work. You're saving the undergrad all of the stress of feeling like they're doing something wrong by fostering this helpful environment where they don't feel like they have to hide mistakes and explain everything that they're doing to you. So I feel like those are two really important keys.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, awesome. Thank you, Joseph. Good luck as you continue your studies. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for reaching out to me and offering to do this interview. I had a lot of fun.